Okay, so we're going to be exploring over the next, well, we did one last week and I will continue today and then over the 3 weeks after that, are some of these themes for reflection that are called perceptions that culminate in the deathless, that have the deathless as their goal. So we have these laid out in several suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya, and we have different sets of five. So the first two are called the perceptions that culminate in the deathless, and you see we have five in Sutta number 61, another five in Sutta number 62. Then we have perceptions that lead to either to disenchantment, dispassion, and nibbana, or to the destruction of the taints, or to liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom. Five themes of reflection, of meditation, very similar to the previous ones. And then we have another set of five that are said to culminate in liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom. Okay, so the one that we will be doing today is the perception of death. And you could see that this particular theme occurs among these sets. It occurs 3 times in Sutta number 61, Sutta number 62, and in all three of these suttas as a perception that leads to disenchantment, that leads to the destruction of taints, that leads to liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom. So this is the perception of death. And the word perception that is used here, sanya, occurs regularly as the third of the five aggregates. So it's the perception is that particular mental function of selecting or focusing in on the qualities of objects. That's the normal use of the word sanya. But it also has an extended meaning of an idea or a theme that's used as the subject of meditation. And in these practices, we begin using a fair amount of reflective thought. Like normally, when we think of meditation, we think of just having a simple object on which we focus the mind and try to suppress or dispel or get rid of discursive thinking. Like when we do mindfulness of breathing, we're just focusing on the in and out breathing. Mindfulness of sensations, we're just observing the sensations in the body. But with these sanyas, we are taking up a theme and then we're exploring it from different angles, initially using reflective thought and sometimes in a rather extensive way. But as we proceed with this reflection, with these reflections, we start to sort of draw them in together, join them together, sort of unify the different themes of reflection until we bring them together into one focused idea, which becomes like the culmination of this practice. And so we'll be doing this in a kind of condensed way today, starting out with extensive reflection on death and then bringing these themes together until we unify them into one overriding, overpowering perception of death, which is the ideal of our practice. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce the way we're going to undertake this practice. Again, I will share the screen. Yeah, this is something that I worked out over the years, I actually based this systematic way of doing the meditation on death, on instructions that come down in the Tibetan meditation manual. But all of the themes come out from the Pali Canon. And I start off with, to introduce it, a statement from the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Sevens, where the Buddha says that the meditation on death, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and great benefit. It culminates in the deathless and has the deathless as its consummation. So, at a sort of more mundane level, we say that the first benefit of doing the meditation on death is that it sort of reminds us of our mortality. And in that way, it serves as a incentive, as a spur to avoiding unethical conduct and being sure that we remain faithful to the standards of ethical conduct. Because even though through immoral conduct we might gain worldly benefits for ourselves here and now, but by engaging in that kind of behavior, we create unwholesome karma. And then when death takes place, if that karma gets the opportunity to ripen, it will bring a rebirth into one of the lower realms of existence, or it could bring rebirth into a lower realm. Whereas when we recollect the inevitability of death, then it motivates us to engage in good conduct, in the practice of generosity, in keeping the precepts, in trying to train our minds in good qualities. And so in that way, we can be confident that when we pass away, that the mind will move to a good realm of rebirth. So that is maybe the initial level, the starting level, or the starting benefit of mindfulness of death. But when mindfulness of death is used as a theme culminating in the deathless, then it has a higher purpose. With this, bringing this benefit into mind, we undertake the meditation on death, the mindfulness of death, in order to gain a kind of disenchantment with samsara, with the round of repeated birth and death. So when we come to understand that again and again we go through birth, aging, and death, then we become disenchanted with this cycle of rebirths and we direct the mind to the deathless element, to liberation, to nibbana. And so that is the purpose for which we should be practicing the mindfulness of death as a practice culminating in the deathless. Okay, so how do we undertake this practice? So the way I've developed it is using three main themes, and each main theme is broken down or subdivided into three secondary themes. And I'm going to do this as a guided meditation. So first I'll just go quickly through each of the themes, and then I'll explore it, each one a bit more fully when we're doing the guided meditation. So first, the three main themes. Death is absolutely certain. Second, the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain or utterly uncertain. Third, when death comes, we have to abandon everything. And then there's a fourth theme without subdivisions, that the only thing, when we die, the only thing we can bring along is our karma, that is, our good and bad deeds. Okay, then now looking at the sub-themes, the secondary themes. So death is absolutely certain. So how do we know this? Well, we consider that everyone who has ever lived before us has died. Maybe if some of you are young, you still have grandparents, but probably for most of us, we no longer have grandparents. Almost certainly, all of your great grandparents and the generation before that, before that, before that. going all the ways back to our ancestors, back in the Rome time of the Roman Empire, ancestors back in the time of, I don't know, the Egyptian pyramids. All those generations have died. And so when that is the case, certainly we can't expect ourselves to live forever. So we know we have to die. And then the second sub-theme, that death comes along with birth. We say that the reason that this one has died, heart attack, this one died from cancer, this one died from, I don't know, a stroke, automobile accident. But the real reason why we die is because we've been born. Once we're born, death comes along and it's just following us all the time. And it's just when the wrong circumstances arise that death gets the opportunity to strike. So death is accompanying us all the time from the time of our birth. Then the third sub-theme, every movement, every moment we're moving closer to death. Year by year, month by month, day by day, second by second, we're ever moving closer to death, to our own death. We always have to make this personal, that it is our own death that we are considering, not just death as an abstract concept. The second main theme, the arrival of death, is absolutely uncertain. First, it's uncertain with regard to time. We don't know in advance. We don't get like a announcement over our cell phone, a direct message. Bhante, your death will take place in such and such a year or such and such a day. But it's absolutely uncertain. We don't know when we're going to die. Second uncertainty is with regard to place. We don't know where we're going to be when we die, whether at home, in the hospital, maybe out when shopping. We get caught in, sometimes we read about this angry person comes in with a gun and starts shooting and people die. So it could be when shopping, out in a movie theater with friends, some angry guy comes in and shoots in the movie theater. That's happened at a rock concert that has happened. So we don't know where we're going to die, and we don't know the cause of death, whether it will be from natural causes in old age or any of the other causes like heart attack, cancer, stroke, a fever, COVID, some other kind of virus going around. Just don't know. Automobile accident, victim of murder, natural disaster, fire, forest fire. We don't know the cause. The third main theme, when death comes, we have to abandon everything. First, we have to give up, leave behind all of our wealth and possessions. We can't take any of that with us, even if you're like Jeff Bezos with billions of dollars, who Mark Zuckerberg, who are some of the other ones, multi-billionaires. Yeah, I was going to say Donald Trump, but I think he has more debts than assets right now. So, but you have to leave all of your wealth and possessions behind. And even though we can do that fairly easily, but what's more difficult is to leave our loved ones behind, our spouse, our children, brothers and sisters, friends, parents, if we have to die before them. So we have to leave all of our loved ones behind. And then the third sub-theme, we have to abandon even our bodies that we take to be I and mine, and our personal identities. the sense of identity that we build up on the basis of the body. So that is the third sub-theme. And then we have the fourth main theme without any divisions. The only thing we bring along when we die is our karma, that is our good and bad deeds. Okay, so those are the points that we'll be running through in our contemplation of death. So let us now settle in for the first session. So we can take our meditation sitting position. Okay, we'll settle in with a few minutes of the mindfulness of breathing to settle the mind and focus the mind. And even though this meditation uses discursive thinking, but it shouldn't just be like sort of casual, clumsy thinking, but with each idea, each theme, you really have to focus in on it and hold it in the mind and sort of let the thought sink into the mind. Okay, so now begin just by focusing on your in and out breathing. Okay, so now we're going to be practicing the mindfulness of death, a practice that the Buddha says is of great fruit and great benefit, a practice that leads to the deathless, that culminates in the deathless, that has the deathless nibbana, nirvana, as its final goal. And so we begin with the first main theme, that death is absolutely certain, absolutely inevitable, not just death in the abstract, but my death, the absolutely inescapable truth is that someday I must die. You let that thought sink in, dwell on it. Don't be don't be scared though. And to reinforce this thought, we reflect that every one who has ever lived before in earlier generations has died. And so we could think back to previous generations, at least our grandparents, or even the parents, grandparents, and all the ways back through generation before generation before generation. All of those people who grew up, reached adult years, worked, played, loved, fought, conducted business, worked as laborers, brought up families, maybe fought in wars, celebrated holidays together. All of them are gone. So I too must die. Those in the past, even those who were wealthy, the millionaires of early ancient times, medieval times, all of the kings and emperors and rulers, as well as the ordinary people, even the holy ones, the saints, even the Buddhas, all have passed away. So I must die. Okay, then we come to the second sub-theme, that death comes along with birth. So we can think that the moment we are born, we are already condemned to death. And death is not something that lies ahead in the future, but death is just the shadow side of birth. So we could think that our death is already present right behind our back. We say, Patiya sahivedang maranam agatang sada maranataya okasang vadako vyasati. That death is following us. It's like a assassin with an upraised sword waiting for the opportunity to strike. It's just waiting for the right conditions to strike. Again, dwell on this idea that death is already present right behind our back, waiting to strike us. Okay, the third sub-theme is that every moment we are closer, moving ever closer to death. So it's like when the sun rises over the horizon in the morning. If we look at the sun, we don't see it moving. It always seems to be in the same place. But we know that every moment it's moving across the sky, moving ever closer and closer to the sunset, split second by split second. And so our own life, in the same way as every year passes, every month, every day, every hour, every minute, every second, we're drawing closer and closer to death. Okay, take in that theme and sort of chew on it for a while, making it clear and vivid. Let it sink into the mind. Okay, so now we have explored the first main theme, that death is absolutely certain, inevitable, and inescapable. My own personal death, I cannot escape. And I know that with every, the passing of every day, every moment, I'm moving closer to death. So death is absolutely certain. But now the second theme, the arrival of death, is absolutely uncertain, unforeseeable, unpredictable. And then the first way it's unpredictable is that it's uncertain with regard to time. I have no foreknowledge when I will die. If you're 30 years old, you can't think, okay, I have 50 years ahead of me. Because people die in their 30s, in their teens. So from day to day, I just don't know when death will take place. Maybe I go for the routine annual checkup, and then the doctor, after doing a little examination, he looks up at me and says, I'm sorry to inform you, but fill it in, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's good to think any day might be my last. I just don't know. Okay, the second sub-theme is that the arrival of death is uncertain in regard to the place where I will be when death comes calling for me. Will it be in a bed in the hospital someplace? Will I be at home, maybe comfortably surrounded by some of my loved ones? Or can it be out when driving, riding in a car, in an automobile collision? Will it be in my hometown? Or maybe if traveling someplace else in the country or traveling abroad and suddenly, for some reason, death occurs? So we don't know where we will be when death arrives. Again, reflect on that for a while. Okay, then the third aspect of uncertainty is that we are completely uncertain about the cause of our death. We just don't know what will be the cause of our death, how we will die. Will it be from some disease, heart failure, cancer? Cancer, what kind? liver cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer. Could it be from heart failure, heart attack, stroke, accident, victim of murder? Or will we live to a ripe old age and just die peacefully of natural causes? We just don't know. Okay, so dwell with that uncertainty about the cause of your death, the cause of my death. Okay, so putting these all together, the arrival of death is utterly uncertain, that it's uncertain in regard to time. We don't know when we will die. It's uncertain in regard to place. We don't know where we will be when death comes for us. And it's uncertain with regard to the cause of death. We don't know from what cause we will die. So just try to combine them in a sense of the uncertainty of death's arrival. Okay, then we come to the third main theme. When death comes, we have to abandon everything, to leave everything behind. In Pali, we say sabbang pahaya gamit gantabang or gamitabang. We must go, leaving everything behind. And first, we have to abandon all of our possessions, all of our accumulated wealth, our home, and then even non-material possessions like status, titles, position, chairman of this, president of that, director of this, chief executive officer. the distinguished so-and-so, the venerable, most venerable so-and-so. All of these titles, positions also have to be abandoned. Okay, the second sub-theme, when we depart, depart this life, we have to abandon all of our loved ones. So you might imagine you're lying on your deathbed and you have to say farewell to your wife or your husband, your children, your friends, other relatives. When the end comes, you have to leave them all behind. Okay, let that theme sink into the mind. Then the third sub-theme, that when death takes place, we have to leave even this physical body that we identify with. We take the body to be mine, but this body has to be discarded, to be cremated or buried. And also the personal identity built up on the basis of this body. Your identity of, we'll say my identity as Bhikkhu Bodhi, your identity as so-and-so, that sense of being I, what I am, based on the physical body. That has to be left behind. So you could think of the body being, say, cremated until just ashes remain, or buried and gradually decaying underground. And so we see that when death comes, we have to leave everything behind. All of our possessions, including titles and positions, all of our dearest loved ones, and even the physical body has to be discarded. But when death comes, the stream of consciousness doesn't come to an end, but continues on. And what it brings, what it continues, what it preserves, are the imprints or the energies left by our karma, by our good and bad deeds. So the karmic seeds continue, maybe the habitual tendencies continue, moving on to a new existence, a new life. Okay, now come back to the breath. Okay, now when you feel ready, comfortable, you can open your eyes and we end the session the usual way. Okay, what we're going to do now, we'll be doing a shorter walking meditation, not 30 minutes. I think, say 15 minutes should be enough. Let us say till 3:15. Okay, a little more till 3:15. And then that's Eastern time. Then come back to your seats, and then we're going to continue, and we'll be refining and compressing the meditation on death, sort of moving it from this reflective process closer and closer to a perception of death. Okay, so we can go to our walkways, and I will sound the gong or the electronic gong when it's time to return to our seats. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is sort of gradually intensifying the mindfulness of death. And so now I went through the three main themes, and each has three subdivisions. So I'm going to review them, but what you will be doing out of each three sub-themes, you're going to pick one, and please remember it. And then we go through each of the main themes, but you just focus on one of the sub-themes under that main theme. except I think the third one is good to cover all three bases. Okay, first, death is absolutely certain. That's the main theme. Now you have like three choices. You choose the one which is most meaningful to you, that everyone who has ever lived before has died. That's number one. Second, that death comes along with birth, that death is always present right beside us, following us along through our life. So death comes along with birth. And the third, every moment we are moving closer to death. So of those three, you choose one. And when we go through the main theme, that is the special way of tackling that main theme that you're going to use, particular focus in that main theme. So death is absolutely certain. You have your three choices. Second, the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain. It's uncertain with regard to the three subdivisions, uncertain with regard to time, uncertain with regard to place, uncertain with regard to cause. So you choose the subordinate theme, whichever one you find most meaningful. And then the third main theme, and here I think is good to use all three of them. When death comes, we have to abandon all of our possessions, to leave behind all our loved ones, and to abandon even this body itself. Okay, so let us settle in. Then I will mention each main theme, then pause for a couple of minutes, and in that pause, you dwell on the sub theme that you've chosen, and sort of really, you don't have to develop many thought constructions around it, but just let it sort of sink into the mind, a little bit like dropping a stone into a pool of water, and the stone will just sink to the bottom. So you let that theme, that idea sort of sink deep into the mind. Okay, take your meditation sitting position, and then settle first into the sense of the body, then to the breath, a minute or so just of mindful breathing in order to collect the mind. Okay, now we're going to be practicing the mindfulness of death. It's always good to start with this statement of the Buddha, that the meditation on death, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and great benefit. It culminates in the deathless, and it has the deathless as its final goal. Okay, so we begin with the first main theme. Death is absolutely certain. Then we know that death is absolutely certain because everyone who has ever lived before us in past generations has died. And we know that death comes along with birth, and it's always following right behind us. And third, every moment we are moving ever closer to death. Okay, now you choose the most meaningful sub-theme here and dwell on it for a couple of minutes. You can develop your own way of exploring it, but try not to get lost just in random reflections, but explore it in ways that make a deep impact on the mind. Now we move to the second main theme. The arrival of death is absolutely uncertain. That is, it's the arrival of my death. You have to always make it personal. That that when death comes for me, that is absolutely uncertain, and it's uncertain with regard to the time. I don't know when I will die. It's uncertain with regard to the place. I don't know where I will be when I die. And it's uncertain with regard to the cause. I don't know what the cause of my death will be. Okay, so of these three, you can choose whichever one is most meaningful, most poignant for yourself, and then dwell on that for a couple of minutes. You can explore it from different angles, but again, don't just get lost in random reflections, but always try to keep the thoughts sort of very deeply personal, directed inward towards yourself. And since these are pretty simple, I think actually you could really cover all three of them if you wish. Uncertainty with regard to time, with regard to place, with regard to cause. Now we come to the third main theme. So when death comes, we have to abandon everything. And here we'll be covering all three bases. So we have to abandon all of our possessions, all of our wealth, positions, titles, and so on. Second, that we have to leave behind all of our loved ones. And third, that we have to leave behind even our bodies and the personal identity built based on the body. Okay, now just on your own, in your own way, you can reflect on these ideas. You can go through each one and let the ideas sink deeply into the mind. Okay. Okay, and then just briefly, we bring in the fourth theme that when we pass on, all that continues is our stream of consciousness, the flow of the base consciousness, which brings along our karmic formations, that is, the imprints of our good and bad deeds, as well as our basic habit formations, dispositions of character, and so on. So just shortly, just for a moment or so, just reflect on that. Don't try to figure it out theoretically, how consciousness can move on from life to life, but just sort of recognize this as a teaching of the Dhamma and the importance of being responsible for our own actions, our own karmic actions. Okay, now we'll do another round going through the sequence of the mindfulness of death. Okay, now we'll do another round moving through the sequence on the mindfulness of death. So we start off with the first main theme. Death is absolutely certain. That is, my death. It's absolutely certain that I must die, that I can't escape death. And we know this because everyone who has lived in past generations has died, that death comes along with birth and it's always following. My death is always following me like my shadow. And every moment we are moving ever closer to death. Every moment I am moving ever closer to death. Okay, turn this theme over in the mind, that death is absolutely certain. My death is absolutely certain, that I will die. Okay, now we come to the second main theme. Death is absolutely uncertain, unpredictable, unforeseeable. That is my death, in that it's completely uncertain. I have no idea in advance when I will die. So it's uncertain in regard to the time. Then it's uncertain with regard to the place. I don't know where I will be when death arrives. And it's uncertain with regard to the cause. I don't know what the cause of my death will be. Okay, now turn these themes over in your mind for a few minutes. Okay, then we take the third main theme. When death comes, I have to abandon everything. And that is, when death comes, I have to leave behind all of my wealth and possessions, including titles and designations and positions. I have to abandon, when death comes, I have to abandon all my dear and loved ones. And when death comes, I have to leave behind this physical body, which will be either cremated or buried, and also leave behind the personal identity based on this physical existence. Okay, dwell on these themes for a couple of minutes. And then we bring in the fourth theme. Just briefly, we reflect that though the body perishes at death, the stream of consciousness flows on to the next existence. And what it brings along are our karmic formations, the imprints of our good and bad deeds, and the basic character traits or dispositions that we have developed. Okay, now to conclude, what we're going to do is to connect this meditation on death to the aspiration for the deathless. And so the way we do this is doing this kind of reflective meditation that this body is subject to death again and again in this beginningless samsara. We go through death after death after death, but nibbana is the deathless. Nibbana is the deathless. This bodily existence is subject to aging and decay, but nibbana is that beyond aging and decay, the undecaying. This bodily existence is unstable, unreliable, but nibbana is stable, unshakable, always reliable. This bodily existence is always disintegrating, falling apart stage by stage. But nibbana is undisintegrating, This bodily existence is insecure, subject to many dangers, many calamities. But nibbana is the supreme security from bondage. This bodily existence is the near shore, that is the realm of birth, old age, illness, and death. Nibbana is the far shore, that beyond birth, old age, sickness, and death. Nibbana is the ultimate purity, the supreme freedom, the island, the island amidst the floods of ever changing and decaying birth, aging, and death. Nibbana is the place of safety, the shelter, the ultimate refuge from death. So we move the focus from the mindfulness perception of death to nibbana as the deathless, the ultimate refuge from old age, sickness, and death. Okay, then you drop all thought formations, bring the mindfulness back to the body in the sitting position. And you could take a couple of deep mindful breaths in and out, in and out. And then you can relax the body. Okay, okay. Then open the eyes and end the session the usual way with rubbing the palms together. And then you take the warm palms and rub them over the face. And then come to the shoulders, then down the lower back, over the kidneys, then down to the buttocks, then to the knees. Yeah, one thing that I find when doing the mindfulness of death is that, it seems scary at the beginning, but when you go through it, it seems like a great relief, like you've gone through, meditatively, you've gone through your death, so now you're ready when the real thing comes. You're ready for it. I compare this a bit like Okay, we have an actor who's maybe he's cast in the role of Hamlet, and the play is coming up, and he thinks, no need to rehearse. I've looked at the play, I've read it before. When I get up there, I'll know my lines, nothing to rehearse. Okay, then the day of the premiere, the opening day comes, and he's driven to the theater. He gets onto the theater, the curtains open. He doesn't know, what am I going to say? I forgot my lines, gee. And then he gets in a panic, and the audience boos him. So that's the way like ordinary people live. Like they don't prepare for death, and then when death comes, it's like a panic attack arrives. But when you do the meditation or the mindfulness of death, it's like the actor who rehearses his lines, practices, memorizes them well, goes over them again and again. So then when the real show opens, when the curtain opens and he gets out there to do his soliloquies, he has perfect confidence. He can face the audience without any kind of panic. And then he gets rounds of applause. So when we do, when we face death with this clarity and with mindfulness, with courage, with determination, then the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will be giving us rounds of applause. Well done, well done. Okay, so we'll be ending now, but we come back in the evening and we're going to further compress. So I think it's important if your time schedule allows to come back for the evening session, because we're going to further compress the mindfulness of death to really move it to the stage from reflection to perception. So we come at 7 p.m. on the Eastern time. Okay, so hope to see you then. I'm not doing the sharing of merit now. We do that at the end of the evening session. Okay, so thank you for joining and hope to see you this evening.
Thank you. I
Thank
love
you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
Good evening.
Good to see you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, Sevantanai.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Good to have you, Bhante.
Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue.
I love your ending remarks. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. I thought people will be saying, why are you pulling such a grim practice? Why are you teaching?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Everybody likes metta, metta, metta.
Thank you,
Okay.
Bhante.
See
Okay,
you.
see you.
Fantastic.
Okay, see you
It's
later.
really good.
Okay.
Thanks, Bhante.
Thank
Okay.
you,
See you soon.
Bhante. Have a good
Bye.
rest.
Thank you so much.
Okay, see you.